Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman, ready for a big show today. Tom, we recap the NFL draft, which quarterbacks will be the best as rookies, which will be the best long-term. And how about the biggest shock of the draft? Speaking of quarterbacks, Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall after the Atlanta Falcons committed, I think it was 4 years, $180 million to Kirk Cousins, a bunch of that money guaranteed as well. Holy moly, what is Atlanta thinking? Also, we'll compare the top receivers. We'll talk the best draft grades for some teams, steal of the draft, just a pretty solid recap of the NFL draft, which for me as a Bears fan, as a Chiefs fan, it was epic.
Nirvana for you.
Epic. I mean, literally, I'm in like sports heaven nirvana with this NFL draft, both with the Bears and the Chiefs. NBA playoffs heating up. Multiple series that are 3-2 right now in the first round. We'll talk about who closes out those series. And actually, I think maybe just perhaps the most entertaining second round series might be the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. That one is already set. We'll talk about that one as well. Betting locks of the week, sports trivia, and more. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing on a beautiful, beautiful Tuesday afternoon?
Doing absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of players that are on the offensive side of the football are doing fantastic as well. As I think we had a run of, I believe it was 16 players in a row to start the draft, all on the offensive side of the ball, which is absolutely incredible, including, like you said, 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. So there's levels to this conversation, of course, when we're talking about like who's the best, because for the most part, going into this, by far and away, Caleb Williams, the consensus #1 overall pick. It really was. This was one of those years where there's a tier between the one of one and then everybody after that. So I think just to start really quick off the bat, you have to say Caleb Williams, I think most likely going to have the best rookie year, most likely going to have the best overall career of any of these quarterbacks, because he's going into a pretty, dare I say, stable situation. That's not something we get to say very often about the Chicago Bears. Now, I do want to have a healthy level of skepticism, because I wasn't a super huge fan of them keeping Matt Eberflus as the head coach. Seems like a wonderful guy, great motivator. But it kind of feels like that was the chance, the opportunity to make a move toward a little bit more offensive-minded coach and really pair together a coach-quarterback combination going into the future. I mean, Shane Waldron does have experience calling plays, but we've never seen him call a Bears offense before. So this is going to be kind of I maintain some healthy skepticism. I think we should temper our expectations for the overall success that we're going to see in Caleb Williams' rookie year. But I do think he's going to be, his name is going to be scrawled across record books in Chicago by the time his career is done. Really, it's more of a conversation of everyone else who comes after, who's in the best spot. And honestly, I'm kind of torn between Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy on this one. At least from a rookie year perspective. Drake May, I think, has the talent and the overall profile to be a viable longer-term quarterback. But of course, not a great line, not great weapons in New England. There's a decent chance he doesn't play this year. If New England says, okay, we're going to go with the veteran Jacoby Brissett, we're going to bring our quarterback along.
That's not going to happen.
I mean, it could.
Maybe the first 3 or 4 games, but 2024 is different. Except for Michael Penix. He's the only one that's going to sit.
You have a first-time head coach in Mayo. I don't think he's necessarily motivated to win the most games first year. He's not in a desperation, I'm going to lose my job. I can definitely see a longer-term vision where they say, hey, we don't have all the pieces in place. Instead of throwing Drake May into the fire, because we see a lot of instances where that doesn't work,
and we see some that it does work. It's 50-50.
I know it's gonna be a judgment call on their part. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if he sits. Whereas I fully expect Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy to be taking on a full seasons of starting, if not partial seasons. They might do a little bit of a bridge. I think it makes more sense to just go straight in as starting quarterbacks, because you've got receivers on both teams. I mean, you've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison if you're J.J. McCarthy. You might even have T.J. Hawkinson healthy coming back. So you have options. there that I think make them a little bit more viable as rookies. I think May has a little bit higher potential long term, though.
Yeah, I mean, I have written down kind of what you just hit on. The best rookie year and the best long-term success is Caleb Williams. He is
Mm-hmm.
the best quarterback in this draft, the best, most talented guy. He can make any throw. He can run. He's actually takes care of the ball. Only 5 picks last year, despite not having an offensive line. Just a very smart quarterback. I think that part of his game is very underrated. A lot of people think of him as just as kind of like a gunslinger, a dual threat guy, but he's actually a smart quarterback. He has either the best or the second best situation. I could argue that JJ McCarthy's situation might be a little bit better just because as good as DJ Moore is, as talented as Rome Odunze is, as good as Keenan Allen is, all these great receivers that Mr. Caleb Williams has, JJ McCarthy will have the best receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, outside of maybe Tyreek Hill, that's a debate right there. Obviously,
maybe
Jefferson,
Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, he's up there though.
I think Jefferson is one. I think I put Chase and Lamb a little bit behind Jefferson and Hill. It's between Jefferson and Hill for me. All 4 of those guys are great, obviously, but I mean, look at what Jefferson has done the last 3-4 years. He is the best receiver in the NFL. Jordan Addison's really good as well. So Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, going into really good situations. It makes sense they'd be the top 2 guys right off the bat. I'm not sold on McCarthy. There's a lot of skepticism in me, so I'm not going to say he's going to have the second best career overall. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I think, is a guy that has – I know we have most of these guys, let's be completely honest, bad situation for Bo Nix, bad situation for Drake May, bad situation for Michael Penix in that he's not going to play. There's some decent players there. But, I mean, it's a 4-year deal for Kirk Cousins. No one wants to sit for 4 years.
Well,
I know there's a 3rd-year option, Tom. But
putting on the contract, Casselman, the guaranteed money's for the first 2 years. So they could move on from Kirk after 2 seasons.
It's a bad situation for Michael Penix in that he's not going to play. So I would say Jaden Daniels has a medium-level situation. It's not great. It's not bad. It's really good for a number 2 overall pick. I mean, Terry McLaurin's a very solid receiver. They have Jahan Dotson. They just added Austin Eckler. So, I mean, their offense, on paper, offensive talent, pretty average.
Decent enough,
which is well above average for a number 2 overall pick. Normally, if you're number 2 overall, you're playing with nobody.
Yeah, so the fact that,
the fact that he's got Terry McLaurin, he's in an okay situation. So I look at him as probably the 3rd best guy or the 2nd best guy year 1, depending on how well he plays. Daniels and McCarthy, 2 or 3 year 1. As far as long term, it's tough to say with Drake May because Drake May has a lot of talent. There's a lot of question marks. Consistency, pocket presence, accuracy. He definitely has the arm talent. He's got athleticism as well. Like I said, Drake May might have the 2nd best ceiling. I think there's just a lot of work to be done in New England. I'm not saying they're not going to do it, but just based on where they are in their careers, I might lean Jaden Daniels, maybe number 2 long term. It's close between him and Drake May. I'm not personally sold on McCarthy or Bo Nix. Obviously I think Bo Nix needs a lot of arm talent that he doesn't have. Now, Drew Brees didn't have arm talent, and he was A-okay. So it's not necessarily the only indictment on him. But again, we've seen Bo Nix. We've even seen Michael Penix play for these smaller schools. Actually, well, not even smaller. Auburn's even bigger, arguably, than Oregon. These other Power 5 schools and not have the same success they had at, Washington, at Oregon. I mean, even Jaden Daniels, same deal, Arizona State. Penix has a little bit better arm, though. He does have some talent. I think he's not going to be helped by this situation because I know sitting 1 year, my opinion, Tom, is some guys are ready right away. I'm a believer in learn by doing. I think some guys can benefit from 1 year. Generally speaking, when you're sitting for potentially 3 or 4 years, I think it does more harm than good personally. I know it worked out for Aaron Rodgers, but let's be completely honest with you. Aaron Rodgers would have been a great quarterback no matter what. Some of these guys are just great players. whether it's year 1, year 2, you can tell they're going to be great no matter what. I'd stick Aaron Rodgers in that category. So it just doesn't make sense that you sit for so long, especially when you're an older quarterback like Michael Penix.
Yeah.
I personally, one of the things I get, for me, the NFL game speed, you can't learn that by sitting on the sideline. You can watch some tape, but if you're sitting for longer than a year, I think you're actually losing ability. You're getting rust. You're not facing that same game speed. You can't replicate that in practice. You can't replicate that in preseason. So the notion that a guy's going to sit for 3 to 4 years, again, cases on both sides. I'm not saying there's a universal yes answer, but in my opinion, it is not good for a quarterback. This is not good for Michael Penix. I would be furious if I were him. I would not want to be drafted that high, even if you get paid the money, because he's not going to have the chance to play unless Kirk Cousins gets injured, which that is possible. That is possible. But definitely for me, best long-term quarterback, Caleb Williams. Best short-term quarterback, Caleb Williams. Daniels in May, we'll see. McCarthy, we'll see. Bo Nix and Michael Penix. I'm not too sure they're going to have, any significant careers personally long-term.
Yeah, there will be the opportunity for Bo Nix, but this is a classic example, and I'll touch on this a little bit later on as well. Of when you're drafting for need, you're overdrafting, you're not really getting value. I mean, that's the name of the game. That's the story behind the Bo Nix pick, and also let's just get into the Michael Penix pick as well.
Real quick, I want to say one more thing too, Tom, before we move on.
Yeah,
they say if you're going to have 6 quarterbacks drafted this high, this is what I've kind of heard tends to be give or take the average. 2 will be really good, 2 will be in the middle, and 2 will be really bad. And I think that's a pretty fair way to look at this, because I think Caleb Williams, for me, sorry, I'm a Bear fan. I'm overly optimistic. Whatever, Tom. The only Bear fans that are not overly optimistic are the Justin Fields defenders. Unless you're a Justin Field defender, you have every right to be pumped. We've never had something like this here in Chicago. So I'm pumped. Let me be pumped. Let me put the expectations up high. I'm not tempering squat. But I'll tell you this, Tom. Caleb Williams, to me, is the sure thing. I think look at Nixon, Penix, probably those guys. And Penix could be good. He's got a chance. But probably those are the 2 that are going to be kind of the never a regular starter, except for maybe early on or if someone gets hurt. And then I look at Daniels, May, and McCarthy. Probably 2 of those guys will be okay, and one's going to be actually really, really good. That's kind of, which one is going to be which, but think of it that way. Layers of 2. Really good, just okay, not so good, backup trajectory long-term.
Yeah, well, the Atlanta Falcons fans certainly are hoping that it's not the trajectory for their first-round pick, Michael Penix, which, I mean, the question I suppose is, was this the most shocking pick we've ever seen? And I haven't gone draft by draft, pick by pick, but yeah, it's up there. I mean, you talk about how in free agency, Atlanta jumped out to the point that they are under investigation for tampering charges against Kirk Cousins. So they were all in on getting this guy $100 million guaranteed in this deal, all within the first 2 years. And then looking at, just watching the draft a little bit and looking at Michael Penix's reaction as he's getting the phone call, it seemed like he was a bit surprised to be going 8 overall to the Falcons. I mean, I certainly felt that way as well. It's just I know you've been building a pretty solid team, but is this the point that you really want to take a quarterback? Because we've never seen a top 10 quarterback have to sit for multiple years. Like you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers was picked in 21st overall, something like that, 24th, early to mid 20s.
Jordan Love the same.
Jordan Love, same way.
Well, the problem is you have to pay him now too, like a top 10 pick. I know they may pay him a little bit less, but generally speaking, you have to pay him more if you pick them in the 20s.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I think it's shocking to us because, just as casual observers, of course, we look at it and it's we put our own assumptions out there. But if the Falcons front office has done their homework and they feel like we've got our guy in this situation, yeah, we've set up the Kirk Cousins deal where we can conceivably get out of this deal after 2 years, or perhaps if we're ready to put Michael Penix in that situation, we have a valuable veteran quarterback that we can trade for a later draft pick. I think that as far as value goes, value, we look at that and say, well, that's a bit of a waste of an eighth overall pick. And typically I
Yes.
would
Yes,
agree,
it
but
is.
I
Yes, it
can like
is.
work out the puzzle enough where it's like,
No.
okay, you know that Las Vegas, Minnesota, Denver, they all need quarterbacks that can start right away. You might not have an opportunity to get your guy. And when you're looking at the NFL draft, kind of like in like a multi-year, as a concept multi-year, like the quarterback class next year isn't really favored, doesn't really look like it's going to be a particularly talented class. We
They
really
have
have no
3 to
idea
4
about
years. They have
2026.
Cousins signed for a while, Tom.
I'm just saying,
Revisit the quarterback class in a couple years.
if they feel like they've got their guy, I can kind of sort of understand why they did it. I had to think about it, and I had to
No.
really puzzle and process and follow the logic train. I
There's
think a
none.
lot of people have to do that.
There's
But
none.
clearly, well, clearly there's a flow chart that led to that being the decision that they thought they ought to make.
I'll tell you this, Tom. A part of why you get a quarterback, they say playing on your rookie contract, they're going to get him for a little bit cheaper than if they want to keep him, they're going to have to pay him more than his rookie contract next time around. So the value of it doesn't make sense. Yeah, you know, if you're in a division where the division is there for the taking, you just signed a really good quarterback to a long-term deal. What do you do with the 8th overall pick? You do something that makes your team better right now,
Now,
something
yeah,
that makes you a playoff team right now. And they still might make the playoffs because that division is horrendous. It's probably the
yeah, not
only
great.
division. It's probably the only division they would make the playoffs out of. If I'm being completely honest, uh, this didn't make sense, Tom. You're investing so much time, money
Mm-hmm.
in 2 guys. You're also kind of like, you know, team chemistry is a thing. I think like Kirk Cousins was puzzled by this. I mean, you have
Yeah, they
the
didn't tell him
last thing
ahead
you
of
need
time.
is a locker room split between a quarterback. You know, we want this young guy who looks good in camp. We have this older guy that we like. And it's not like sometimes, I guess the term is stopgap quarterbacks. Like some franchises know that that guy necessarily isn't it. He's a solid veteran quarterback, a guy they can learn under. Like Alex Smith was a stopgap quarterback in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
But Kirk Cousins was arguably statistically the best quarterback in the league last year before he got hurt. And the year before that, Tom, the numbers in the 4 years before last year, there was only 4 quarterbacks that had 12,000 yards over the last 4 years. No, it was, what was it, 16,000 yards over 4 years, aka 4,000 or more average, and 120 or more touchdown passes. So minimum averages of 30 touchdowns and
Mm-hmm.
4,000 yards in a season over a 4-year span. It was Patrick Mahomes, it was Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I personally think Kirk Cousins has not won in the playoffs more because of the team around him as opposed to Kirk Cousins, the quarterback. Obviously, that's the knock on him. He hasn't won in
Mm-hmm.
the playoffs, but he has consistently been a top 10 quarterback in the league. And I'm not too sure if we get the best out of Michael Penix. I'm not too sure that his ceiling is a top 10 quarterback in the league. I really don't think so. I'd say his ceiling would be average, maybe 15, 16. And we're talking ceiling here, Tom. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking like realistically, he'll be a 20 to 30 guy.
Sure, I hear you.
So it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. I get it that maybe you're thinking about your future, but it's a messy, messy situation. And again, this guy was graded as a late first round, second round talent. I
Mm-hmm.
get the ability to do this if you feel like this guy, and maybe this is what they think. Maybe they're misguided about him. Maybe they're higher on him than we are. Maybe we know they know something we don't. Sure, that's the reasoning. But it seems really, really puzzling. It was the most shocking for me. Obviously, I kind of try to keep this. I didn't really do research on this because I tried to keep it off the top of my head. And the other one that comes to mind for me was when the Bears took Mitch Trubisky, because at the
Mm,
time, as a Bear fan, they traded up a pick when they could have got him anyway. I know that Deshaun Watson was graded higher. Even
yeah.
Mahomes obviously ended up being much better than anyone expected. But a lot of draft boards actually had Trubisky as the second or even third quarterback in the draft. I mean, I think Mahomes was rated just as high, if not higher than him. So the Trubisky pick as a Bear fan was
Mm-hmm.
shocking. I think the way
Yeah.
that draft was, Watson was like there wasn't like a clear
No.
one, but I think
So there, this was an exercise that was done a little while back, where it
yeah.
was okay if we average out all these like draft experts and their
Which one was the
rankings.
best guy? Was it
Deshaun
Mitch?
Kaiser
Deshaun
was
Kaiser.
consensus number one. I think Mitch
Okay.
was two, Watson was three, and I think Mahomes was fourth or even fifth. I think there was another quarterback I'm blanking on who was like a first or second round pick in that draft that they had mixed in there as
Well,
well. But
either way, they took
yeah,
him. The all reports were saying they could have got him anyway. They traded up a pick at the time. I actually liked Mahomes because I had seen him play against Arkansas back when I covered Arkansas. For me, Mahomes was actually number 2 on my radar at the time. Now,
mm,
did I think he'd be what he is? No, I'm not going to pretend that I did, Tom.
yeah,
I'm
you
just
can't
saying
really
I
say
had
that sort of
my
stuff. Yeah.
Bears wish list at the time, which obviously now Mahomes, obviously, duh.
Hmm.
But it was Watson and Mahomes were my 1-2, and that's who I wanted him to get personally. And that one was a little shocking. The Mitch Trubisky to me was shocking. Just one, to be honest with you, I was a little bit young to remember this draft, but I remember it a couple years later. And obviously nowadays, anytime the draft comes up, I always think of the Ricky Williams trade where it
Sure.
was like their entire draft and
Yeah.
basically the next year's draft for Ricky Williams. It was between the Saints traded everybody to Washington. Now,
Hmm.
Washington actually didn't get a lot of good guys about that. I looked that up. Champ Bailey's the one they got, but he actually played most of his career with the Broncos. So they
Yeah.
did get a Hall of Famer, but they only had him for like, I think 4 or 5 years. I think it was 5 years he played
Hmm.
it in Washington. So that one is kind of shocking. Now, if you look at it through the lens of like today's game, the running back, what it means, that has to be
Yeah.
the most like crazy one. Uh, and I guess it was unexpected at the time. If you look at research, it was unprecedented. Ricky Williams was a really, really big talent, but I don't think anyone else would have made that trade. But Mike Ditka, the coach, and the Saints
Hutch.
making that move. So
Yeah.
those are a few that stick out to me, but this one probably was the most puzzling in
Hmm.
Atlanta. It was one of those where you had to do a double take. I was on the air, working, selling memorabilia, my sports podcast, and we had the draft on in the background. And actually, I happened to look over at the TV or at the computer, and it flashes over Michael Penix 8th to Atlanta, and I'm like, what?
Is there a trade? Is there something
What?
else going on?
It's just so weird. And that was the first thought. Is there a trade? Then it
Hmm.
turns out there's not a trade. And I
Yeah.
just think you're putting both of those quarterbacks in a really tricky
Hmm.
situation. So I know you're going to go down the logic train, and obviously,
Yeah, I don't
I
agree
don't. I
with
think
it.
it's
I can just
flawed
squint and
logic,
see what they're talking about.
right? It
Like
just
that's the spot I'm in,
I
especially
don't
when
know.
you consider like yeah, they've got like some you could do a lot to help this team. I mean, you've got Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and while you signed Darnell Mooney, nice, nice side piece as a receiver, you could have done pretty well giving Roma Dunze to Kirk Cousins as a weapon as well. But
Receiver,
thankfully,
pass
as a
rusher,
Bears
offensive
fan,
lineman. There
Odunze
was
falls to the Bears, and he's
yeah.
right up there with the top receivers, Neighbors and
Well,
Harrison.
let's
So
transition. There you go.
that's I'm sometimes I act just professional enough.
There you go,
But
Tom.
this
I
was like
like
a
it.
really heralded, talented core. I mean, I'd say Harrison's the guy that most people have number one overall, but there are plenty of champions out there saying that they actually like Neighbors a little bit better, or even a Dunze, where they say, hey, you strip away the names, you strip away the program, just go based on the numbers and the measurables, and you might come out with a different answer than you would otherwise think. But I think that just goes a long way to show that these are three receivers who would be number one receivers in a lot of different drafts. They just happen to be coming out at the same time turning pro. So Marvin Harrison Jr. goes fourth overall to the Arizona Cardinals, pairing him with Kyler Murray as his quarterback. Malik Neighbors draws the short straw, going to the New York Giants, sixth overall
Drew
with Daniel
Lock,
Jones
M-I-Z. Drew
or
Lock
Drew
over
Lock.
Daniel Jones. Drew Lock
That
over
could
Daniel Jones.
absolutely be on the table either by merit or by injury,
Tiger
as
to
Daniel
tiger,
Jones is
baby.
recovering, possibly.
Tiger
And
to
then we've got,
tiger.
of course, like I said, Roma Dunze to the
Mizzou to
Chicago
LSU.
Bears, pairing up with Caleb Williams. So in terms of, you know, I guess best position to succeed perhaps this year, best maybe long term arc. I think this conversation could be a lot more nuanced because there isn't the clear one and then everybody else that we have with that quarterback discussion. Here, you could see any one of these guys, like this could be the type of class where was it Julio Jones and AJ Green, I believe, were in the same class. Like this could be one of those classes where these guys are just headlining the NFL for a long, long time with some nice highlight grabs.
Yeah, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best. He is the number one rated.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a late charge, on Neighbors and Odunze. I think part of that has to do with the fact that Harrison didn't do any workouts, the combines.
That's part of it, sure.
Odunze and Neighbors tested really, really well. But I think Harrison is the top-rated talent. I also think he's going in for him in the best overall situation, in that he's got a good quarterback in Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a very underrated quarterback, really accurate quarterback. He can throw the ball. I think Caleb Williams might end up being a little bit better, but Odunze also has DJ Moore and he has Keenan Allen. Like, is it going to help him not face double teams? Yes. Is it going to take away some of his numbers? Just from a numbers perspective, I think Marvin Harrison has the better situation in that he still has a good quarterback, but he's still the guy there. As Odunze, is he 1? Is he 2? Is he 3? I mean, he's probably in the best spot to win football games. So it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about individual glory, individual stats? Are we talking about wins?
Sure.
But whenever you look at the, wide receivers, we talk about historically, who's the best receiver. I mean, Randy Moss is probably the second best receiver of all time. He never won a Super Bowl. Larry Fitzgerald's a top 5 receiver of all time. He never won a Super Bowl. Chris Carter's an all-time great. He never won a Super Bowl. Terrell Owens, all-time great, never won a Super Bowl. You don't really talk about the all-time great receivers and really look at who won how many games, who won how many Super Bowls. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is positioned to be the best guy long-term. I think he's going to be the best guy right off the bat. As for Malik Neighbors, he's definitely in the worst situation, I would say. The worst offensive line, the worst quarterback in New York. But there is something to be said about when you're the number one receiver and when there's no other options, they're going to force feed you the ball and you'll find ways to eat. So from a statistical perspective, his situation is not as bad as you would think, just because he's going to be clearly the guy there. He's going to be getting the looks. So I would say he has the worst situation, but it's not much worse than you think, unless you're looking at it from the perspective of like who's going to win the most games. If you're looking at it from a stats perspective, he's the clear number one on his team. So it is still the worst situation, but not as much as you would think. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the most talented. I think he's going to be the best long-term. Obviously, as a Bear fan, I hope it's Rome Odunze. But if I had to pick one of those three, which, let's be completely honest, it's fully possible that all three could be Hall of Famers. Like you said, all three could be the number one receiver in any draft.
Within the range of
all these quarterbacks that got overdrafted. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. was probably the second best player in the draft behind Caleb Williams, and Malik Neighbors might be third, Tom, and Rome Odunze probably top 5. So I think all of these guys are going to be great. I think Odunze has the potential in the red zone with his big body, with his catch radius. The reason why I'm going to rank him like I say, Harrison is 1. I would say Neighbors a little bit behind him and Odunze a little bit behind Neighbors. I think he doesn't have necessarily the same breakaway speed as the other two guys, which obviously we know that, wide receiver is not all about speed. Jerry Rice is, not all that fast relative to the fastest guys ever. But that's probably one area that he's a little bit behind those guys, just the sheer speed and ability to, beat somebody by 3-4 yards down the field. He makes a lot of those tough catches, but he's not going to outrun you as well as the other two guys. So I'll say Marvin Harrison 1. I'll say Neighbors 2, Odunze 3. Odunze is going to win the most games, but he's also, is he 1? Is he 1B? Is he 1C? It remains to be seen. I guess I'm excited to see what happens actually between DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. I think both of those guys are number one receivers. All three of those guys are. But they're like lower, like medium level number one receivers, like right around that like 8 to 15 range of talent wise. So who's going to be the number one Who's going to put up the best numbers? I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, I think Marvin Harrison is going to jump out the gates, but I think perhaps long term, and I'm going to let my bias show. I'm going to be a little bit bold. I'm going to say Roma Dunze, I think, is going to end up having the best career out of these three guys for a couple of different reasons. I think for his rookie year, yes, as of right now, he's the third wide receiver in the pecking order, but let's
Maybe
looking at Keenan Allen
a
in
little
his
bit
career. When
older.
was the last time he played a full season? I mean, slight asterisk on 2021. He played 16 games. That was the first year they went to 17 games. So more or less played a full season. But the subsequent 2 years, 10 games in 2022, 13 games in 2023. So
Still more than
he's
half the year, most
well,
of
yeah, it's
it.
still more than half the year, but like he's a 31, 32-year-old wide receiver who's missed time the past couple of seasons. I think there
He's
will be
also
plenty
coming
of
off a career year
opportunities.
too, Tom, though.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I think there's going to be enough opportunities for Roma
Sure.
Dunze to actually perform and put up numbers this year, in addition to the fact that he's paired with Caleb Williams now going forward as a really long trajectory. We've got, what, like 5 years if the Bears decide to go just year by year, not do any sort of extension, do the fifth year option. If they wanted to even do something, playing games like do two franchise tags, you have Caleb Williams for like a relatively cheap window for 7 years. I mean, can we say that about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray, that he's going to be locked in with a primo quarterback for the next 7 years? We can't
If he
even say that
stays
about Malik
healthy.
Neighbors year one. Like, well, I mean, by that point, Kyler Murray's going to be about like 33, which is still doable, but given his style of play and his overall size, like he's a bit of an outlier as far
He's
as
got
quarterbacks
better
go.
ceiling than Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. Better passer of the ball, better ceiling. I'm not saying he's as good as
Better
Lamar
ceiling than
Jackson
a
because he hasn't been healthy,
two-time
hasn't been
MVP.
consistent. He's got better talent. Yes, he's got better ceiling than Lamar Jackson.
Okay,
I think Kyler Murray is
agree to disagree
in
on that
in
one, but
in my
but
opinion, the most uh, underrated talent of any quarterback in the NFL right now because he's got a great arm. The only knock on him is he's small and he gets hurt. What if he stays healthy? That dude could be
I
unbelievable.
I hope that he does as a player of a certain fantasy game. I hope that that is absolutely the case. But I'm gonna plant my flag in the ground and say that
I
Roma
hope you're
Dunes is
right.
gonna have the best career out of these three guys. But again, it's not to diminish the other two. I think all three are outstanding players, outstanding talents. I think he's got the best window for a good long career, especially if he and Caleb really like develop together over this long period of time. Like we don't really have to get into it much, but I'm trying to think like the last time there was like two players of the same class, like Joe Burrow,
Was it
Jamar Chase, a year
Culpepper and
apart.
Moss? I don't know if
Were
they
they
were the same
drafted
class.
Vikings
They
in the
might have
same
been the same
class?
class. At least they were
Maybe,
close.
but like
No,
that's
no, Culpepper was the year after, I think, but they were close.
right. Yeah, like it's. I don't think we don't often get to see this sort of thing in the NFL. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
They have Bo Nixon as college receiver, but a little bit different
Oh yeah,
talent.
Bo Nix, Troy Franklin. That'll be we'll see how those compare.
I'm just
Well, I
saying.
mean that kind of dovetail nicely into which teams had the best drafts, because I mean you can look at Denver and be like, okay, on value, maybe not necessarily great. They filled quarterback, which was a need, but did they really get the best guy, or did they get the sixth best guy? And then, getting some wide receiver depth with Troy Franklin. I don't have Denver anywhere near the top of my best draft
Oh,
comment.
I have a lot
Who
of good
would you
ones.
say is like your top team? I have a couple that I can just kind of like touch on really briefly, not going super in depth on them, but I've got one,
I got
two,
four.
I've got like five teams I would consider winners coming out of this one, like
All
by
right.
far and away winners.
Well, I got four.
Go
So
for it.
the number one winner is our Chicago Bears. They got the
Yep.
number one pick overall. They didn't even have the worst record. They got in that what turned out to be an incredible trade with the Panthers, like a
Mm-hmm.
too good to be true type of trade. So getting Caleb Williams, the best quarterback, the best player in the draft. But wait a minute. They got him an elite level receiver at number 9, Roma Dunze. And then they got a really good punter out of Iowa, Torrey Taylor, Iowa's best offensive weapon. Come on, Tom.
Just
That's a
really quickly,
he's
like I
supposed to be
saw
one of
that.
the best picks at
I,
the
I s-
position.
I saw that. It's just like really a punter. Like I know that the Bears have like built up like a pretty solid foundation, but really a punter. And then as I'm going through, it's like, well, but he's the best punter. As I'm trying to justify my
Yes.
emotions about, it's like,
They got the best quarterback, the best punter, a top 3 receiver. I love that they went offense early. Offense and special
Sure.
teams. They got an offensive lineman. They got an edge rusher. All the needs were addressed that they needed. They got everything they needed in this draft. Obviously, I think if you can get 2 arguably top 5 talents in this draft in the first 10 picks, and you get one at number 9 too, because again, Roma Dunze is probably a top 5 talent in this draft. I think we can agree that he's probably more talented as a prospect than any of the quarterbacks except for Caleb Williams. So just with those 2 guys alone, it's already the best draft because you're looking at potentially, Tom, if all goes well, potentially 2 guys that are putting on gold jackets that you get in the draft. Any team will tell you if they get 2 Hall of Famers out of any NFL draft, they are succeeding.
Yeah.
The second best draft for me has to be the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think it's because they got Xavier Worthy, we'll get the steal of the draft, but he's by far the steal of the draft. I have some numbers for you, Tom, because a lot of people are thinking of Xavier Worthy as this 4.21 guy, the fastest combine ever. You hear me say this all the time. I don't care that much about the combine. I care more about the production. This dude has the combine and the production. Let me give you some college numbers, Tom. 39 college games for Xavier Worthy and 37 college games for Marvin Harrison Jr. So Xavier Worthy had 196 catches, which was, let's do the math, carried the 141 more than Marvin Harrison Jr. in just 2 more games. He had 2,752 receiving yards compared to 2,613 for Marvin Harrison. So if we do it on a per game basis, pretty much dead even. Maybe Harrison just slightly ahead, but the receiving yards pretty much dead even. 31 touchdowns for Harrison, 25 for Worthy. So their numbers in college were almost identical. This dude produced. He produced in an offense where he was like a co-number 1. I get the Big 12. The defenses are not as good as the Big 10. But this guy on a production level over his college career put up just as good numbers as Marvin Harrison Jr. He's even faster than Marvin Harrison Jr. They say that he's got this sort of deceptive power in him. He's a good route runner. He's not just a skinny, fast guy. And the fact that Andy Reid is obsessed with him, Andy Reid knows ball. The Chiefs know ball. They traded up to get him with the Bills, which, by the way, what the heck are the Bills doing? The last time they allowed the Chiefs to trade up, they got Mahomes. They need a receiver. They could have got Worthy themselves. I know they got Keon Coleman, who's good, but, man, Keon Coleman is way slower than Xavier Worthy. Not nearly as good of a receiver, in my opinion. So I think the Chiefs, with the Worthy pick for me, that alone has to put them on the top because they addressed a massive need. They're improving that receiving core. All of a sudden, you look at Hollywood Brown. I know Rashee Rice might miss some time, but he'll be back for the playoffs. That weak receiving core from last year now has Worthy, Rice, and Hollywood with Travis Kelce in the playoffs. I think the Kansas City Chiefs, just by virtue alone of getting the steal of the draft, had an incredible draft. I went in the draft day one, Tom. I had 3 things on my wish board, and it was perfect. I wanted Williams 1 to the Bears, which was, well, it was going to happen. And the other 2, I wasn't sure. Would the stars align? Would the guys be left? Would the teams pull the trigger? My number 2 was Roma Dunze to the Bears at 9. That happened. And then I wanted Worthy to the Chiefs. That happened. So I was pumped with the draft for Kansas City and Chicago. As a fan of both teams, I could not be happier. I think the Steelers did a really good job. Got 2 really good offensive linemen, which is kind of getting back to that Pittsburgh Steeler football. Let's run the ball. Najee Harris is a pretty good running back. Hasn't had a good offensive line. Both of their offensive linemen got pretty good grades. Really good guys. I think, the Steeler way of running the ball. Jerome Bettis, Franco Harris, all these historical running backs. I thought Pittsburgh did a really good job. And then I like the Cardinals. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. With the 4th pick, who is probably graded as the 2nd best talent in the draft. They also got Darius Robinson out of Mizzou. That has me pumped. a really good pass rusher. Mizzou guys seem to work out as pass rushers. Then they got Christian Jones in the 4th round at offensive tackle. Actually, 5th round, I think it was. And he's considered a 3rd round or late 2nd round talent. They got him later than they should have. They got a tight end as well for Kyler Murray. What do? They got Kyler Murray, a wide receiver, a tight end, an offensive lineman. So
I mean, they already had a tight end, but like I think they could have gone different there. But I get what you're saying.
The tight end's supposed to be good too, by the way. So they got him some weapons. I think the Cardinals, there was the thought: do we move on from Murray? Again, I think it's too early to move on for him. Is it the style of play? Is it not? I don't know. There has been a lot of injuries, but his numbers are really good. The team with him as quarterback versus with him not as quarterback are way different. I think they did a good job of getting their quarterback what he needs, and I think it's key because they paid a lot of money for him. They're not giving up on him, and I think the Arizona Cardinals, for me, are a sleeper team, Tom. That could be a really good team. The Rams are losing some guys. They're getting older. The Niners will always be there, but Seattle has that quarterback question. The Cardinals could become that second best team in the NFC West in the next 2 or 3 years. Could definitely be a playoff team. So Bears, Chiefs, Steelers, and Cardinals are 3 that stood out. I don't know if you read the online reports. The Ravens had a really good one, supposedly. But these 4, for me, are the ones that I was most impressed with.
Yeah, I share your sentiments, obviously, with the Bears and the Steelers as well. I mean, Fautano as their first offensive lineman, and Zach Frazier, who's kind of like maybe like late first, early second type of pick. And I just kind of like that style of building through the trenches, which is why I'm also a bit of a fan of what the Raiders did, oddly enough. I mean, they came into the draft
Brock
in a
Bowers.
similar position as the Broncos and the Vikings. They had a need a quarterback, but instead of reaching more than they needed to, they said, you know what, we've got a decent stopgap guy in Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell for quarterback. We can probably do okay enough with them if we give them a player like Brock Bowers. So I think that was a great pick on value, just because of how talented he is and how important tight end is in the NFL. I also like that they just kind of sat back and took a great interior offensive lineman prospect in Austin Powers Johnson, where I think he's probably going to be their center, but also could end up at guard. Just building up a team's strength that way. I thought the Eagles did a phenomenal job. I mean, you talk about drafting for value and need. That's not really something that happens a lot, but when those two things intersect, you get Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo and Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. I mean, that was the biggest problem with the Eagles last year is like I remember from our shows, we kept saying, well, like at some point, the Eagles defense is going to round into form. They're going to snap back into form. And it just never happened because Darius Slay losing, quarter of a step, James Bradbury losing half a step as these guys lose some of their functional play speed.
Injuries too.
Injuries too, yeah. But like you build up like a really solid defense. And like
a new DC they had too. Now they got a better one, by the way.
You need cornerbacks in a passing league. You need people to rush the quarterback and, guys that can stay with these guys a little bit, try to limit them. So I thought the Eagles did a phenomenal job. And then I don't like saying it, but I thought the Vikings did a really good job with their draft. I mean, they didn't have to give up a ton to move up to ensure that they got J.J. McCarthy trading with the Jets. It was a couple of late round picks. And then, I mean, talking about sleepers, you typically are talking some later round guys, but we were talking about Dallas Turner as like the top edge rusher.
Yeah.
He was 17th. Like there was talk about, I could be happy if the Bears decided to pair him with Montez Sweat, picking him a 9th overall, or maybe trading back a couple of picks, maybe swap with, the Broncos who want to move up. You pick him at 12 or something. But for the Vikings to pick him up at 17 as the first defensive player off the board, I think that's great value. That's great process right there. They had to trade up to do it, but I mean, we saw what the Texans did. You trade up for great talent regardless. C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. I mean, that's how you build a team with blue chip guys, and you don't often get blue chip guys that late in the first round. So I thought those were all winners as far as drafts go. And then if we're talking sleepers, I mean, one late round guy that I kind of sort of like is Brendan Rice to the Chargers in their 7th round. I know that he's not like an outstanding prospect that, fell whatever, but like 7th round, that's where you take a flyer, and he's got, I think, enough profile that he's going to be a decent receiver, enough opportunity for that Chargers team. As I think they have Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer as like their top 2 returning receivers. Of course, they added Lad McConkey, which we'll touch on a little bit. Thank goodness for
You
that.
got it right.
But that's one that I think is like a solid move as well, as far as like just taking a decent player in the 7th round. I know there's a little bit of name value as he's Jerry Rice's son, but he can definitely have an impact, and you don't often get that out of a 7th round. Yeah,
good genes.
absolutely.
Well, speaking of 7th round, let's talk about the steals of the draft. I actually went with a lot of the first round picks as steals because I thought they got picked earlier. Then I have one later round guy as well. So I kind of hinted at it the last segment. My steal of the draft is Xavier Worthy with the 28th overall pick for the Chiefs. 4.21 speed, the fastest ever at the combine. I just broke down the numbers the last segment. He played 39 games, 37 for Marvin Harrison Jr., only 2 more games played, but he had more catches, more receiving yards, and only 6 less touchdowns than Marvin Harrison Jr. 196 catches, 2,752 yards, and 25 touchdowns. This guy was productive in a Texas offense that had another receiver in Mitchell. He played with Bijan Robinson over his college career, even the number 1 running back in this draft as well. So he wasn't like necessarily the only guy that we're going to, but he still put up massive numbers. He's fast, but he's also a good route runner. He's deceptively strong. He's very efficient, and they're looking for him in that Tyreek Hill role. Obviously, if he's going to be, I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be as good as Tyreek Hill, but there's a lot of comparisons there, and he's going in the right system with the right quarterback in Mahomes, with the right coach in Andy Reid. And really, it's the Kansas City receiving core that has good players, but not necessarily a guy that is for sure proven long term. I mean, Hollywood Brown is good, but he's not he's a 1A, 2 type guy. Rashee Rice is 1A, 2 type guy. They have basically 3 guys now that could be either lower end number 1 receivers or 3 really, really good number 2s. Then you pair him with Travis Kelce, who is obviously a phenomenal tight end, maybe the best in the league. Then Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback. Andy Reid, arguably the best offensive mind. Xavier Worthy is massive. He fits well with the Chiefs. They'll find the right ways to use him. And talking about putting on the gold jacket, we'll see. But there's a lot of hype around this guy in Kansas City, and rightfully so. To get a guy that, in my opinion, is a top 10 talent, top 15 talent, Kansas City hit a home run with Xavier Worthy. Marvin Harrison Jr., I would say, how is he a steal? He's so highly touted. Well, the fact that he's number 4 is a steal. I mean, we're talking about the number 1 or number 2 most talented player in this draft. The Cardinals getting him at 4. Everyone else took quarterbacks. Did they reach too high for quarterbacks? Was it need? I don't know. But the fact that the Cardinals got Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, massive, massive steal. You just talked about him in the last segment. Brock Bowers at 13. Again, top 10 pick talent-wise. Why did he go 13?
Maybe even top 5.
Maybe even top 5. Tight ends are big in the NFL. I mean, Kelce, Laporta, Kittle, Mark Andrews, all these teams making deep playoff runs. It's not just because of the tight end, but they do have that in common. Tight ends are cool. I mean, Kelsey's dating Taylor Swift. Tight ends are in right now, Tom Casselman. Brock Bowers is the best tight end in this draft. Such a fantastic player. He's a winner. He's tough. He's strong. He's athletic. He's just a really, really good football player. Getting a guy like that at number 13 is a steal for the Raiders. And then my more later round steal would be Troy Franklin for the Oregon Ducks. He went in the 4th round, 1,383 receiving yards, 6th in the nation last year, 14 touchdowns, tied for 3rd in the nation. He's going to go with Bo Nix. I don't know about Bo Nix being great overall, but it's great for Troy Franklin because Bo Nix knows him. He's familiar with him. They know exactly what each of them want to do. Now, there's not a really big, talented room of receivers currently with the Broncos. Franklin's going to get a lot of looks. He can have a really, really good career, no doubt. 4th round pick. He could be like a late 1st round, 2nd round talent for me because I'm about production, and this guy, boy, he did produce. Yes, he was in that offense, but still, those numbers are really, really good. He's my late round steal. And then my hopeful other steal would be undrafted Cody Schrader out of Mizzou. He was a top like 5 rusher in college football last year, top 10 in the Heisman voting, goes to the 49ers to be McCaffrey's backup. He's going to be a very, very solid pro. Love him as an undrafted sign pick. Also, Harrison Mevis out of Mizzou, the kicker that can kick the ball a mile. Look out for him to have a good career kicking the ball. And with my Mizzou guys getting picked up, Tom Casselman.
Yeah, definitely going to be fun to see who has a chance to break out, because there's going to be sleepers, people that come out of nowhere every draft, whether it's a Tom Brady out of the 6th round, George Kittle out of the 5th, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. There's always opportunity just because of the pure attrition that happens in the NFL. But a series where there's been quite a bit of attrition in the NBA, Milwaukee and Indiana, as we are going to game 6. Pacers up 3-2 on the series. We've got, let's see, I'm looking right now. The latest from Adrian Wojnarowski is that Giannis and Dame are both trying to return tonight for game 6, but unclear if either will be
that's what
able.
I got as well on my phone.
So it's one of those things where this might be Indiana's best opportunity to close it out. They absolutely got run out the building their last game. So it's I mean, I'm just going to go out and say I had the Pacers in this series in no small part because of the Giannis injury, and then with the Dame injury, I thought it was going to be even clearer that they were going to win. We're still saying that this is a unbalanced, kind of flawed team with Indianapolis. They're definitely not world beaters or anything like that.
Defense.
I think that they're
none.
I think that they're taking advantage of an opportunity in front of them, but that we're still seeing some of that inexperience, which honestly, if they win the series, it's actually served them kind of well from the development standpoint of, okay, we were able to win one. We can learn a lot of stuff. It's a lot easier and a lot more fun to learn and get coached up when you're coming off of a win, having a messy win in a series. So I think that the Pacers will do that. There's a couple of different reasons, and I'll be referencing these in our upcoming Locks of the Week segment. But their 2 losses came in games where they failed to score 100 points. So that's really what it comes down to. If Indiana's putting up points, I think the Pacers have a good chance to close out game 6 and really just shut the door on, we don't want to potentially face, Dame time, game 7, Giannis time, game 7. We want to close this one out at home in front of all of our fans, and I think they'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I think this is, the winner of game 6 is going to win the series. Obviously, Indiana wins, they clinch the series. If it goes back to Milwaukee game 7, the Bucks are taking it. I have it written down. If Giannis and Dame play in game 6, the Bucks are definitely winning. If one of Giannis or Dame plays, even Dame, they are going to win, Tom Casselman. The Pacers are a young team. They're used to losing in the first round now multiple years in a row. They don't play any defense, not any defense whatsoever. They don't have the focus to win a tough series. They just have more talent than the current Bucks roster. But, I mean, the Bucks role players just beat them by 23 points the last game. Now, think about this. What if Giannis or Dame comes back? The Bucks role players all of a sudden are shooting with confidence. They're getting easier looks. Everything just gets easier. So if one of those superstars comes back, which are guys that we've seen deliver many times in the playoffs, even Giannis, you and I were doing a show, what was it, like 2 years ago, where Giannis was a game time decision for game 1 of the finals. He ends up playing, tears up that game, tears up that series, has one of the best playoff final series of all time, 50 points in the deciding game. Giannis has been a guy that once he's come off injury, he's made an immediate impact. It's not a guy that really needs time to really get going. If he's healthy enough to play, this dude's going to put up numbers. So I think the Bucks with Giannis and Dame are hands down the better team. I think the Pacers are up in this series because we haven't had Giannis in the series. We haven't had Dame for certain parts of the series.
For most of it, really.
There's 2 scenarios. If neither plays, the Pacers win game 6 at home, they win the series. If they get one of these guys to play in game 6, I think Milwaukee wins game 6, then they win game 7, and they complete that comeback. So just more playoff experience. Chris Middleton. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton's a better basketball player than Chris Middleton. But Chris Middleton in the playoff setting, who do I trust more? I still trust Chris Middleton more personally. That dude is a fantastic basketball player. Even like Bobby Portis, he's been really good on big moments. So even Pat Bev, he might get in Halliburton's head. He kind of already did last game. So I kind of like this Bucks team. I like this Bucks team, and I like these guys a lot more if they're not asked to be the stars of the game as opposed to the secondary pieces. So I'm going to bank on one of those guys coming back tonight, and I'm going to bank on a Bucks upset tonight. And I definitely like them +8. I'll tell you that much. That's coming up in a little while.
Oh, I can imagine. I had that one pre-written in for you. Another Eastern Conference finalist pick from this show. Philadelphia 76ers staving off elimination against the New York Knicks. They will be hosting a late one on Friday night. Kamen, do you think that the Knicks have what it takes to close it out, or do you think that Philadelphia is going to come back down from 3-1 to advance to the winner of the Pacers and Milwaukee series, which is quite frankly a pretty smooth path to the Eastern Conference Finals?
This is again another one that comes down to injuries for me, because like how close to 100% can Embiid be? Because he's had multiple things, multiple injuries, all sorts of conditions, migraines, the balls, whatever it's pronounced,
Bell's
palsy,
palsy, yeah.
Bell's palsy. Like Embiid is not 100%. That's obvious, but he still put up a triple double last game anyway. Tyrese Maxey was the big hero with 46 points. Can he score 46 again? I don't think so, but does he need to? I mean, this series should be over, by the way. I mean, you're up 6 with 29 seconds, the Knicks. You foul a 3-point shooter for a 4-point play. You miss a free throw. Inexcusable stuff. The series should be over. And sometimes when you let a team back in a series, it's not good. It's not good. It gets messy. It might get messy for the Knicks. I'm going to say Philly wins game 6 at home. And then game 7, as we know, anything can happen. I'm going to lean Philadelphia because I think they're better overall. That 1-2 duo of Embiid and Maxey is great. But I also can see it going south if Embiid gets hurt even a little bit more. I think a lot of this is going to depend on Joel Embiid. If you get him at 80, 90%, that's probably enough with how good Maxey is playing. But if you get him at like 50, 60%, then the Knicks would win. So I know it sounds like a cop-out answer, but I think it's going to depend on Embiid's health. But I'm not even an Embiid fan personally. Some of the things he says rub me wrong. He's a Kansas guy. I'm a Mizzou guy. I'm by no means necessarily an Embiid fan, but I do kind of feel bad for him in that this guy's had so many injuries in the playoffs. He is one of the best players in basketball. And as a sports fan, I want the best players to be healthy on the biggest stage. So I'm going to somehow put that positive ethosphere out there that Embiid is going to be as healthy as possible, that he'll show up in a big series. So I'll pick the Sixers to win game 6, the Sixers to win game 7. Philadelphia and Milwaukee, the two better teams in the series. They both get down 3-1, but they both rally to come back because why not, Tom? It's the NBA playoffs, and it's a lot of fun.
Anything is possible, as Kevin Garnett
Anything is possible.
I'll also go like, this is tough because I'm not a Knicks fan. I'm a Tom Thibodeau fan, and I do want to see him succeed. I mean, I think the key is, beside the injury, I think the key for the Knicks is going to be Josh Hart and basically all the other role players in New York.
Oh, gee.
Is it going to be the Jalen Brunson show, or is there going to be enough guys stepping up? Are there going to be enough guys stepping up to carry some of that offensive load? Because we've seen the Knicks kind of like their offense go sputter a little bit and kind of rely a little bit too much on one player to kind of do it all for them. It's tough. I think I'll stick with the 76ers as well in this one. It's been not like the series certainly has not gone the way that I expected to. I thought that it would be kind of like game 6, 76ers going to close it out. But this is a team where, Nick Nurse, he's a champion coach. He knows what he's doing. I think he'll have these guys focused and prepared every bit as much as Tom Thibodeau will. Just a little bit more talent for the 76ers in winning this series. Really fun pettiness with their owner teaming up with blanking on who else, but basically to buy a bunch of tickets, and then they're going to give them to first responders and other folks like that, just to prevent a big migratory wave of New York Knicks fans coming into their building.
Yeah,
So
Philadelphia fans have to show up. Like Miami
petty
Heat
ticket stuff
fans,
always
Philly
makes
and
me
Miami
laugh.
fans are not loyal enough, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Show up.
Yeah, and then we got two more series that are yet to close out. Probably one that's been a little bit of a snooze fest for myriad reasons. Magic and Cavs. The Cavaliers in the closest game of the series, winning Game 5 by a single point. But we've seen Orlando blow out the Cavaliers when they host, which of course they'll be doing for Game 6. And then they just seem to disappear when they are on the road. At least they did for the first two games. This is really the first competitive game in the series. So Cavaliers up 3-2. I thought it was a bit of a coin flip series going in, lean Cavaliers. I think I'm going to end that way. I don't necessarily know if it goes 6 or if Orlando kind of keeps with their current trend of being really good at home and then falling a bit flat on the road. Really, Game 5 was their opportunity to kind of like really ice away the series. I think that Cleveland now is in a better spot to do so.
Yeah, this is probably the most evenly matched series, the 4-5 matchup. I think the Mavs and Clippers would be a little bit more evenly matched if Kawhi Leonard was a little bit more healthy.
Yeah.
But this is probably the toughest one to predict. But I'm going to go with the Cavs as well. They have the best player in the series in Donovan Mitchell. They have the home court. They haven't lost at home yet. So, I mean, they also have more or less room for error. If we're talking about two evenly matched teams and you're up 3-2 in a series with the home game, I'm going to have to go Cleveland. I feel like the Magic win Game 6, the home team winning all the games. Then Cleveland closes out in Game 7. So, yeah, I'll take the Cavs as well, Tom.
Yeah, by that old logic, then the series never really started.
Exactly.
Anyway, moving on to Dallas and LA, Mavericks and Clippers. I agree with you. I think had Kawhi Leonard been healthy, this would have been a much more competitive series. Clippers actually did well to have it at 2-2, but we've seen Dallas just kind of like pull away as this series has gone on. I think, can't remember who I
won a lot of money last night on that
ahead
game.
Of time, but I can imagine.
Dallas was the favorite going in. Not heavy,
Dallas was
but they
the
were the
favorite going in. Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
and I think I slightly leaned Dallas. I can't remember for posterity's sake if I had chosen leaned Clippers or Mavericks on this one, but I think it's pretty clear they're just in a better spot overall as a team.
Yeah, I think they close Game 6 at home, win the series 4-2. Kawhi Leonard being hurt hurts the Clippers, but that's been the story with him the last few years. He definitely has been hurt. And I look at James Harden and Paul George are two very talented players, but they've always been a little bit more inconsistent to begin with, but especially in the playoffs and especially at this stage of their careers. Because you look at, like, there's some games you watch James Harden play, you're like, this is MVP level James Harden. Then you watch him play the next game and you're like, this guy can't hit a shot. And that's the problem. Like, can they get a consistent James Harden or Paul George?
I forgot who I saw say this on Twitter, so I apologize for taking your work without attribution. But somebody said James Harden is one of the few players where you can say classic James Harden game and have nobody will know what you're talking about exactly. Just because of that range of outcomes that he seems to have.
And I think you look at Luka's younger, Kyrie's younger. I mean, basically we have, with Leonard hurt, and maybe Leonard comes back, but he has not been the same. He actually has hurt his team when he plays because it kind of keeps that aggressiveness level. Harden and George are less aggressive. They defer to Paul George, obviously, or defer to Kawhi Leonard, excuse me. I would say if all three were fully healthy, Kawhi Leonard is probably the best guy. But given that he's not right, he's actually probably currently the third best player on that team if he were playing because of his injuries. So Harden and George have to be more aggressive. They have to be the go-to guys. It just hasn't meshed right, the timing there.
Yeah.
I think that, Luka and Kyrie are more consistent. They're playing better basketball. They're younger players. The Mavs will be at home Game 6. I think they close out the series in Game 6. The Mavs move on. And then my Western Conference final pick still intact. Mavs versus Nuggets. Mark it down.
There
I
you
just
go.
gave
Yeah.
away my pick for the next series, but you already know where I was going to go.
Well,
I
yeah,
already know
because
where you're going to go as
we're,
well.
we're we're both in on that one really quickly. The Celtics and the Thunder both won their series.
Yeah.
In
Waiting
I
on
think gentlemen
opponents.
sweeps, maybe actual sweeps for the Thunder over the
No,
Pelicans. I think
Thunder
that one only
swept
went
them
4.
4-0.
We don't have their opponents yet, so we're not going to touch on their series. The only next matchup that is completely set: Denver Nuggets with a gentleman's sweep over the LA Lakers, and then I thought it was kind of surprising, a bit of a wake up call for us casual fans. The Timber Puppies becoming Timber Wolves with
Oh,
a bit of a
yeah.
surprising sweep. I mean, riddle me this, Kamen: when is a goat not a goat? When it's an ant. Anthony Edwards
Ah.
and the Timberwolves. I think this is going to be like a really great series because we've got. While I didn't have the Timberwolves sweeping the Suns, I think I had the Suns winning outright in that series. But like I can see now, based on the style of play, based on the overall team construction, point guard still really matters in the NBA, and not having a clear one for the Phoenix Suns definitely hurt them, I think. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant were able to get up their shots, of course, because they're superstars. That's what they do.
They
But
missed a little bit more often than normal.
yeah, there wasn't really as much flow, and with a team that is as good, as tenacious on defense as Minnesota is, that can be a death knell. And we're going to see a matchup now where the Timberwolves are going to go up against a Denver Nuggets team that has very clearly defined roles. Everybody knows where they fit in the proverbial org chart on the offense. So this series went from being, I feel, fairly comfortable about the Nuggets to being cause for concern a little bit. I think this one could actually be like a 7-game slog between these two teams. That's how good. I mean, we're both going Nuggets on this one because we went with that, preseason. I think we both picked Nuggets in the NBA Finals. We both did that pre-playoffs. There's no real reason to switch off of that just because of how good, how talented that team is. But the Timberwolves, I mean, sometimes there's an out with the old, in with the new, and we might be witnessing that in Minnesota.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in the sense that I would say I still feel fairly comfortable about the Nuggets, but I would not be absolutely shocked if they lost. So I would probably put like my confidence level a little bit higher than yours. I would say it's probably 80-20. But if you asked me before the playoffs, I would have probably said it's 95-5. So I am getting a little bit of steam to Minnesota. I mean, you watch this series against the Suns, it's pretty obvious Anthony Edwards is one of the next big stars in the league. If he already isn't, I mean, the guy is fantastic. He's a great basketball player. Yeah. He's got like this sort of cockiness about him. I wouldn't describe him as a classy guy by any means, but it's like that cockiness that works for him.
He has an on-off switch because he definitely was like talking trash to Kevin Durant. But if you look at the opposite shot where the camera's pointed at Durant's smiling, and after the game, like he's very complimentary. Like he dapped up Kevin Durant. I think that he's good at.
I think
I'm
he's got his in-game mode.
But outside,
yes,
that's
what I'm saying.
Very personable.
He's not a guy in a post-game conference. They're going to be like, "Oh my God, this guy's terrible." You look at him on the court, though.
Yeah.
Have you watched that movie? The one with Adam Sandler with the prospect based on the true story, and Anthony Edwards is in the movie, and he's a high-level prospect. It's a really good movie, actually. You got to check it out. I can't remember what it's called, but Anthony Edwards actually acts in the movie, and he's kind of like this massive jerk in the movie. And I'm like, this is kind of how he plays on the court, because he's a jerk on the court. He's got that little bit of like Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green in him, except for he's Larry Bird. Well, not as good as Larry Bird, but like I was going to say, he's more talented than Draymond or Dennis Rodman. He's got the classic mind game cockiness, but he's also got the athleticism to back it up. And all of a sudden, he's worked on his three-point shooting, his shooting game. He's not Steph Curry. Nobody is, but he's getting better. He's getting pretty decent at shooting the ball. He's a weapon, to say the least. Speaking of shooting, Karl-Anthony Towns, 42% from three this year. He can beat you inside, outside. Look, there's no stopping Nikola Jokic. And we saw Anthony Davis couldn't stop him. Anthony Davis is one of the best defenders in the league. Supposedly, Rudy Gobert is the best.
4 times he's the best.
4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns is another big body. Like, they're a team that, again, no one's stopping Jokic. Nobody's stopping Jokic. But they're equipped to at least limit him a little bit. If somebody can do it, Minnesota should be the one to do it with the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. I like their inside-outside combo 2-time. That's something I always look for. I always tell you why am I skeptical of the Celtics, because they're so much live by the 3, die by the 3. Well, the Nuggets can get down-low buckets with Jokic, just like the T-Wolves sometimes. Down-low buckets with Karl Anthony Towns, or even post their jams with Anthony Edwards. This has the ability to be the most compelling series, maybe the entire playoffs. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Ultimately, I think the Nuggets are more seasoned. They're more experienced. And I think they're even better because, Ant Edwards, Towns are good. Nikola Jokic is he's the best player in basketball. There's no way to put it. Like, I know I always say, like, there's so many great players in basketball that are super close, and I still agree with that. But I think it's gotten to the point where you can't really debate against Jokic. Like, he is the best player in basketball. It's like, I'm kind of at that point, like right now, at least at this stage of all the players right now, it's not really, in my opinion, a debate no more. Jokic is the number one guy in the NBA. And Jamal Murray, he's kind of like playoff Jimmy Butler, playoff Rajon Rondo. His playoff performances are even better than his regular season. And he's a guy that seemingly is not phased. Even if he's playing bad, when the game's on the line, he's going to knock down game winners. I think he's got that sort of confidence. That whole team has that confidence. They fit so well together. Michael Porter Jr. is playing the best basketball of his career. Aaron Gordon looks rejuvenated. Caldwell Pope, that guy can knock down so many clutch shots. The Nuggets are the best team in the league. They're the best team in the series. I got them in 6 games over Minnesota is my pick. Nuggets in 6.
I'll go 7, and really quickly, speedy recovery to Chris Finch, the head coach for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Ruptured patellar tendon. Oof, not great.
It is a little bit easier to coach, though. I imagine he'll be sitting most of the time. He can still coach.
Or on one of those roller things with his knee, propped up. Well, there's a coach at the NCAA tournament years and years back that had one of those, but speedy recovery to him.
I think it was the Georgia State coach.
Yes, it was. And a speedy recovery to our locks of the week after an 0 for 6.
Woo!
Bounced back with a 4 and 2. I went with NFL draft props. Got a hit with Jonathan Brooks being the first overall running back taken. Unfortunately, got to pay a little bit of juice on that one. If you jumped on ahead of time, it was actually plus money. Lad McConkey under 35.5. He went, I think it was 33rd or 4th to the LA Chargers.
34th.
They helped me out there. And then, of course, my plus money pick of Adonai Mitchell fell all the way to the second round. You want to talk about potential sleepers for the Indianapolis Colts. Add him into a receiver room that, there's some opportunity. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, decent receivers.
His GM is going to defend him. I don't know if you saw that clip. The Colts GM.
Chris Ballard I really like him. Former Bears scout, and they let him go manage another team. But he was the guy that came out and defended CJ Stroud, I believe it was, last year, talking about like there's all of this garbage that gets talked pre-draft because teams want guys to slip, and it's not right. It's not right to these kids just trying to make their way, because instead of having a free market open, you can sign whatever players you want. You have to rely on draft slots. That is a topic and a revolution for another time. Kamen had a great week as well. Bucks -1 over the Pacers in game 2. I believe, was that the game that Dame got injured, or was that game 3? I can't remember exactly, but Pacers went ahead and picked up game 2. But you did get Clippers or a Mavericks -1.5 over the Clippers in game 2.
They won by 3, barely.
And then in not even close to a sweat, Inter Miami +110 with the outright win over the New England Revolution 4-1 on Saturday the 27th of April. So good week for you there as well.
Tom, I have been making so much money betting on Messi in Miami. Another like $400, $500 this last weekend. I am in the green of over $2,000 on the year, Tom. I've been, and honestly, if I took out all my Chief bets and all my Messi bets, I'm probably roughly even on the year, but I'm just cashing
Hey,
in on
find what
Messi
works
and
for you.
Mahomes. My boy
Find what
Messi.
works.
I
What do you have
parlayed
this
him to
week?
score, them to win, him to score multiple goals. All of that hit. So I'm going to go into Miami again. This is a little juicy. It keeps going back and forth from minus 125 to minus 130, but I'm going to take it. Miami minus 125 to beat the New York Red Bulls. Home game for Messi. He scored or assisted in every game this year. 2 or more goal contributions in 3 straight MLS games. Miami's got the best record in the league. They've won 3 straight. They lost to the Red Bulls last time out when Messi wasn't playing. Well, guess what? Messi's playing. He's in fine form. It's a big game. Inter Miami money line. They're knocking out the Red Bulls. The goal scorer props are not up yet. Messi has gone more juiced. It might be like, minus 150, minus 140. Bet a lot of money on it. It's going to happen. Parlay it with the result. Just if you bet Messi to score, Miami to win every game, and then you parlay it as well, you're up a lot of money. I speak from experience. So the goal score props that I saw aren't up yet. It's going to be probably a little bit juiced, but I would go ahead and take that juice because even if it's like minus 140, Tom, minus 140 for a sure thing, that's not bad. I'm going to go 76ers minus 3 over the Knicks tonight. Sixers at home are going to be tough. Maxi's confidence is through the roof, 46 points. Embiid coming off a triple-double. He's going to be big tonight. The better 1-2 duo of that series. Now, Maxi and Embiid. The Knicks 1-2 duo, there is no 2 duo. It's a 1 duo. It's Jalen Brunson. So I like Philadelphia at home to win by...
Just an Uno then.
Yeah, just an Uno. I like Philadelphia to win by more than 3. And the updated line, which this is kind of, in my opinion, kind of good news. I don't know where would you have it at. I had it at +8 this morning. I bet it at +8 last night. It's moved to +6. I'll still take it for the show. Maybe a little bit of indications that there might be some murmurs of Dame or Giannis maybe playing, Tom. Nothing official yet. But the fact that the line is moved by 2 points overnight, I don't know. Those guys in Vegas.
Pre-show, I saw it as 8.5. But yeah, it's probably moved quite a bit.
It's 6 right now on DraftKings.
Yeah.
I bet it last night. I got my money in last night, Tom, at +8. So I'm feeling really good about it now.
There you go.
But I'll take the Bucks +6. The Bucks just beat the Pacers by 23 points without Giannis or Dame. Obviously a lot of question marks. Are they going to play? I've already said it. If Giannis or Dame plays, they're winning this game outright. The players that knocked down all these shots in that 23-point win last game out, a lot of confidence, a lot of rhythm, a lot of momentum. All of a sudden, these shots are even more wide open with the superstars back. That whole Bucks team's going to play great. No defense for the Pacers, by the way, which is what makes it so much easier for the role players to actually score points as well. So I kind of think even if Giannis and Dame don't play, it's a closeout game. Milwaukee's going to keep it close regardless. So even if those guys don't play, the +6 cover, I feel really good about. If they play, that Bucks money line, it's probably going to move a lot. I mean, if they announce both are playing, it might be even a virtual pick 'em, but I would still take Milwaukee personally. So at 6 points, I feel really good about the Bucks +6 tonight against Indiana. So Bucks +6 on the road, 76ers -3, and Inter Miami money line over the New York Red Bulls.
Well, I want points with that Pacers-Bucks game. The over-under is set at 213.5. The under is hit twice in the series, and both games were when Indiana scored fewer than 100 points. Both of those games took place on the road. And I would even say in that last game, you're getting blown out by that much. You're rolling out some of the bench players. You're just making sure that your stars get a little bit extra rest, no risk of injury heading into some really pivotal game 6s and 7s. So I feel pretty good about the over hitting. It's hit most of the games so far in the series, and I think it will at home as well for the Pacers over the Bucks. Go for the Knicks and 76ers game. I have 2 player props on that. I'm going to go with Tyrese Maxey over 6.5 assists. There's only been one game in the series where he has not gone over that total. And Nick Nurse is giving him tons of minutes, so there's plenty of opportunities for Maxey to have those opportunities. He's obviously very capable of putting up points, but that's also meaning he's drawing the attention of the Knicks defense. It means plenty of open opportunities for his teammates on driving kicks, moving the ball, etc. And then another player that has seen his minutes go up almost feels like exponentially, although of course with an overtime game that will help. But OG Anunoby, I'm going to go with him again. His points prop is 14.5. He's topped that total in each of his last 3 games as he's gone. I think it was 39, 47, and 50 minutes, something like that.
Jeff City's own,
in the
baby.
past 3 games. There you go. Like,
Jefferson
didn't come
City,
through for
Missouri.
me at the end of the regular season, but we are going much shorter rotations. Tom Thibodeau, very well known for riding with his guys, keeping it to like 6 or 7, maybe 8 guys in a rotation. So again, plenty of opportunity for OG Anunoby, especially with the 76ers keyed in on stopping Jalen Brunson. So I think they're a decent chance for these to go on through. We do have a little bit of a tight timeline on the show, Kamen. So do you have trivia statement? Where would you like to go?
Oh, yeah. Let's do the trivia and the statement.
Go for it.
Here. By the way, could be a 6-0 week for us. So, Tom,
Fingers
8
crossed.
games in NBA playoff history where a player has 20 points, 20 rebounds, and 10-plus assists. Nikola Jokic has 4 of the 8. Can you name the other 4 guys to do it? Let that sink in. 4 of the 8 for Nikola. He almost had 5. The last time out, he had 9 assists. He would have got that as well.
Wow. So Wilt Chamberlain's the first one that comes to mind because he did everything, but not
Wilt, which probably some numbers, maybe not official back then. Probably not enough assists. I don't know. But not Wilt.
Not Wilt Chamberlain. Okay,
You're warm, though.
Relatively big guy. Would it be maybe Bill Russell?
Not Bill Russell.
Not Bill Russell.
You're warm again. There's one guy you're not going to get, Tom, but there's 3 that you have watched. Well, no, 2 that you grew up watching, 1 that you know very well. Big name.
So I think Magic, because he played center for the Lakers a little bit. No.
Not Magic.
Not in the finals.
But his teammates.
Kareem. So Kareem would be the one then?
Kareem is 1.
Huh.
And there's 2 big guys.
2
of the best power forwards of our generation.
That tells me Tim Duncan. Because he's the best power forward of our generation.
And who's probably the second best?
Well, Kevin Garnett.
There
we go. So those are good. Okay, so what was the last clue?
A real quick clue. If you don't get it after this first clue, you're just not going to get it. But
sure.
Old school Celtic big guy in the 70s, not Bill Russell. He was a one-time MVP, by the way. And I actually have heard the name, but if you don't know it, you're not going to know it.
Yeah, I've got 3 lined up. So would it be Sam Jones?
Not Sam Jones.
Okay, Kevin McHale.
No, he was the 80s.
McHale. He was 80s? Okay, big guy in the 70s. Robert Parrish wasn't playing for the Celtics that early, was he?
He was the 80s also.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he might have played a couple games in the 70s for all we know, but 80s guy.
Yeah. Who would it be then? Not like Havlicek, is it?
Dave Cowens.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say the name, I've heard the name. Of course, obviously does not spring to mind.
Yes, exactly. Kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Do you have anything statement of the week? What do we got?
I don't really have statement of the week necessarily. I mean, we've talked a lot of stuff where there's some pretty statement heavy stuff. I mean, I think Rome Odunze, best receiver out of the class, given situation and talent, is probably what I would put in here. But what do you have?
So I have a Nikola Jokic one. We're ending on a Jokic theme here. So
I'm always happy with that.
This is bold, but I think it's true in my opinion, Tom. Nikola Jokic is one of the best 4 pure passers in NBA history. I'm not talking about assist numbers. John Stockton, great passer. Steve Nash, great passer. But I think they were just passing the ball more. Just the sheer vision, not the pick and roll, not having Karl Malone to make your points easy. A lot of rumors about John Stockton's assist stats. I don't know if you've heard this, how it was inflated, how the scoring system in Utah, the home guy would give him extra assists. All-time great John Stockton, but there's just some rumors of some of those numbers getting a little bit inflated, a little bit of generous assists, so to speak. But I'm talking about pure passers of the basketball. The 4 best guys in NBA history: Magic Johnson, of course, Larry Bird, again, pure passer, averaged a lot of assists, less than a point guard because he wasn't a point guard. He was on a team that did everything. He was a scorer too. Larry Bird, in no particular order.
Sure.
LeBron James, we've seen the vision. We know what LeBron can do. And Nikola Jokic. He's up there with those 3 all-time greats as far as pure vision, pure passing ability, both crazy passes and simple passes. Just a guy whose mind is next level. I mean, I think for me as a soccer fan, Messi is the same way. Xavi, Iniesta, these are guys that see the pass before the pass. They're like 2 steps ahead of you at all times. That would be Magic, Larry, Jokic, and LeBron. I don't want to pick just one as the best, but I'm grouping them in that top 4 passer category.
I'm all about tiering stuff and clouding people and round tabling. I mean, I put
your Mount Rushmore of passing, Tom Casselman.
I put like Jason Kidd, Steve Nash in that conversation as well.
Rondo was really good too.
And then not even like pure numbers, but you watch, there's some rare treats watching Jason Williams highlight videos.
Oh yeah,
Sacramento and Miami,
elbow pass.
You know, doing some serious street ball stuff on the court. Like there, you know, like that's the underrated aspect of the NBA's. You know, we all ogle at the dunks and the shots and all that good stuff.
Like the
but
passes.
Oh, sometimes just a good passing video.
See, like I watch like the top 10 every night. It's a tradition. And, you know, the 2 most overplayed top 10 plays are the dunks and the diving catches / robbing home run catches. I like the unique stuff. I see so many dunks and, you know, diving catches and home run robs. I like seeing the passes. Something different, something we don't see as often. Nikola Jokic just makes the game look pretty. I know people might think he's not one of the most exciting players. I disagree. I think he's super exciting because of the way he passes the ball. He is a true joy to watch, up there on the pantheon of greats, LeBron, Magic, and Larry. And if he keeps going this way, certainly the start of his career wasn't quite at the level that those guys had. I mean, you know, LeBron, Magic, Larry, right off the bat were amazing. But, man, he keeps winning these MVPs, these finals MVPs. You know, we talk about Curry and Durant. Are they top 10 guys? LeBron is. Jokic might be sliding into that top 10 all-time player debate. I think it's well worth it. This guy's an absolute beast. Love Nikola Jokic. The guy is just a joy to watch. Unselfish, too. Unselfish. And I think for LeBron, it's almost frustrating because I think people have this notion that Jokic doesn't care about basketball because he loves Serbia, loves his horses. I think he still cares, Tom, but I think he's unfazed by it. He's not like as nervous. It doesn't consume every ounce of his body. It doesn't mean he's less competitive, but we always say like having a work-life balance is healthy for your work situation and your life situation. And this is a guy that doesn't get rattled. And I think LeBron James, like LeBron is so like basketball focused and legacy focused. That's not necessarily a bad thing because Michael Jordan was the same way. But I think like he's just used to being like more mentally tough than the other player he plays. But I think Jokic in some ways, and we do have to put an asterisk on this, LeBron is past his prime. I think, you know, he's still really, really good. I would still take prime LeBron over prime Jokic. But at the current moment, this is the first time I've kind of seen it in the last couple of years where LeBron is not the best player in the series, and he's not even arguably the best decision maker, and arguably maybe not even have the best IQ because LeBron has immense basketball IQ. Jokic is right there up with him. And I think for him, it's kind of frustrating to see this, you know, big, old Serbian guy that, you know, shouldn't be up there with him.
But he's like 27, 28.
Like, I guess big Serbian white guy, excuse me. Yeah. That's the way I'm going to put it. Seeing this big Serbian white guy that got drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. He's right up there fighting with LeBron James. I got to say LeBron probably frustrated by it. Davis is frustrated too because Davis guards him and Jokic makes some shots where it's like, I did everything I could. Like, I think a lot of these guys look at this and they're like, why is this guy so good? He shouldn't be this good. But he is. and maybe a little payback. I know it's an All-Star game setting. It's a different setting, but he was the last guy taken in the All-Star game by LeBron James a few years ago. And now Jokic has the last laugh over all of these guys in the NBA.
Yeah, 29, by the way. So point still stands, but no, good showing on Kamen. We've got places to be heading after this one, but I think a really great show recapping the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs. We will be reconvening at a to be determined point to continue recapping NBA playoffs as it goes on, maybe touching a little bit of NHL and other sports around
I like that, Tom. NHL. Yeah, it's important. Maybe some baseball as well. We haven't talked baseball in a hot minute. So going to be a lot of fun in the weeks to come, Tom. As always, thank you so much for co-hosting with me. Thank you to all the people that watch the show, listen to the show, take time out of their days. You guys are the best. Tom, I'll see you soon, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.